Hello everyone, welcome to episode 45, Reconnaissance. Where did we leave off in episode 44? Well, we are in the town of Fondurg, whereby we are having an altercation, to put it nicely, with a young green dragon. A green dragon called Lucifrique, who is residing somewhere to the north of town in the Lannis Woods. Lucifrique has previously attacked the town of Fondurg, picking off individuals one at a time from the outskirts, trying to force this town to show deference to him, fealty. We have tried to lay an ambush for Lucifrique, which did not work to our favour. We've picked off a few of his generals, so to speak, his half green dragon offsprings. But that has just served to anger him more than anything else. Last night, however, we decided that we were going to take the fight to him and send out a very small reconnaissance party into the Lannis Woods to decide to discover where his lair is and how much of a force he genuinely has, and whether or not we can take him. So this morning we made our way towards the mayor's hall to finalise this plan and get the final okay from the mayor. And we discovered there was a little bit of an early morning commotion around the town square, as pinned to the outside of the stone well in the very centre of town, as a very clear message that your walls can't stop me, sort of thing, was a note that said something along the lines of, it seems you've killed more of my children, I'll have to increase my collection rate, in reference to the fact that for every child of his that you've killed, every half-green dragon you're killing, he is taking one of the town. And along with that note, we also discovered that Cassandra, the young sort of mid-teens woman who works for the Knights of Kvosna as a receptionist, she was also missing. And it seems that either she's missing within the town, maybe she's run off, or maybe she's been taken by the dragon, or maybe even, as some of Apis' synapses were speculating, maybe she even was working with the dragon. So you set off towards the north end of town. You are meeting Briar there. Briar is your halfling companion, who is a druid. She's only 2 feet tall, so she's short even for a halfling. She's a tiny little wee thing, but she's quite powerful with animals and plants. She knows how to speak with animals and read their minds and sort of convince them that she means no harm, as well as turn into them and things like that. She's a very animal-focused druid. And as you arrive at the north end of town, buzzing over from overhead comes your giant bee companion and settles down on a nearby rooftop. And the three of you have assembled to go off into the forest as your reconnaissance mission. You approach the front gates. You bring out your note from the mayor, from Pertran, the one in charge of the Knights of Kvosna here in town, and you hand it to the guard on duty. For argument's sake, let's say it's Joey. You approach Joey and you say, "Listen, the mayor has requested that we be allowed to leave the town walls this morning." And the thing you notice first is that there's nobody at the north end of town this early in the morning anyway, that is trying to leave. Over the last couple of days, ever since the dragon was confirmed to exist, there have been people trying to leave Fondurg and the gates have been locked. Nobody is allowed in or out, with very few exceptions. But with a note, Joey reads it, acknowledges that it was properly sealed by Pertran's wax seal signet ring before Joey cracked it open. Right then, open the gate, and gives the command. People take the bar off of the gate and open it just a small crack for you to slip through. You and Briar slip through, and Mel buzzes over the top of the wall anyway. And then the gate is closed behind you, and you hear the brace being put back on the door. So as you, Briar and Mel, find yourself on the outside of the north end of Fondurg at early hours of the morning, probably around, by the time you've dealt with everything in town, probably around 8 a.m. or so. What do you want to do? Do we have our oil flasks? Yes, we do. That is one thing that I forgot to add. So, we have, as you can see, a perfectly prepared inventory that I am very cleverly making right before every session. We bought some lantern oil. We harvested a giant boar tusk and some crow feathers from the things that we killed. So what do you want to do? You are outside of the town. It is about 8 in the morning, give or take, and you have a day of reconnaissance ahead of you. I believe you still have all of your spell slots. You've got inspiration and a lucky horseshoe. You've got all your hit points. You've got all your hit dice. You are as ready to go as you could be without leveling up. I vote Briar transforms into a horse. We ride her and make some distance so that we can get close to where we lost our hunter's mark, and then short rest once we get there so Briar can get her wild shape back. That's definitely an option. How often can Briar transform? So as a druid, druids get 2 uses of their wild shape between short rests. So she can transform into a creature. She can stay as that creature for a number of hours equal to her to half of her level, and then she can gain both uses back when she finishes a short rest, which in my world is a minimum of half an hour. Pass without trace in hunter's mark direction while tracking and being as stealthy as possible. Alright, so yes or no in the chat, put a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Do you want to use Pass Without a Trace at this moment? Pass Without a Trace, for those who don't know, is a spell. It would use one of our spell slots. You can see how many spell slots we have by nature of the berries and the flowers. We've got 4 first level spell slots represented by berries. We've got 2 second level spell slots represented by flowers. And Pass Without Trace is a second level spell. It takes an action to cast, and it lasts for up to 1 hour, depending on how much you can concentrate on it. So with only a few yeses and significantly many more nos, we think it's too soon to use that. It only lasts for an hour, and it's a second level spell slot. Pass Without a Trace is a spell that adds 10 to any stealth checks that we make. It shrouds us in shadows and things and makes us a lot more stealthy. How far did we feel the hunter's mark travel, and how much did the rat stop before the spell faded? The rat stopped significantly, like it stopped to find its way and scratch around and then keep moving. Keep in mind that hunter's mark is not a locate creature. I tend to allow spells to be used slightly differently than they're written, as long as they don't step too heavily on a spell that already exists. There is a spell called Locate Creature that does exactly that. It pings in your mind the exact distance and direction to a particular animal at any one point, a particular creature at any one point. So Hunter's Mark is not that spell. It is a different spell. Hunter's Mark gives you advantage on survival checks to track that creature. Because Hunter's Mark for you has been buffed by the god of hunting himself, I allowed a little bit of crossover with Locate Creature, so you got the general gist of the direction it was going, but not really the distance. Just like it was going in this direction for an hour, so you know the direction to travel in. And once you get to the point where it was, you'll have, because of the Hunter's Mark, you'll have a slightly lower DC on the tracking of that animal. But it is not Locate Creature. So what are we trying to do, Samuelson says? So we're trying to do a reconnaissance mission out to the green dragon that we know lives somewhere nearby in the Lannis Woods, and we're going to try and find his lair and stealthily work out as much as we can about that lair. So if we're not using Hunter's Mark, if we're not using Pass Without Trace right now, what do we want to do? Do we like Cakeladder's idea of having Briar turn into a horse so that we can ride out as far as we can, cover as much ground as we can? Put a yes or a no to that idea. Do you want the Cakeladder? I do. I like my idea. Good to know that you're consistent with your own idea. Do we want to have Briar turn into a horse so that we can ride her out in that direction as far as we can, and then have a short rest so she can get her wild shape back? How close is the forest to this town? The forest is relatively close. Like, it's on the north end of town. Like, as soon as you are out of the north of town, you are on the path that runs to the mostly to the east of the Lannis Woods. But the Lannis Woods stretches quite far to the north, like several miles. Arathan says only if she agrees, but everybody else is saying no. No, no, no. Alright, so we're going to walk. We're just going to walk then. Walking on the garden path. It would be an indignant thing to ask. It makes Briar less effective later. Not if we have a short rest to recover her spell slot, but her wild shape slot. But the people have spoken. Apis decides no, that's not something worth doing right now. So instead, you just set off walking. You and Briar and Mel obviously flying. You walk on the path north of town. You walk past the bodies of the the bodies have probably been cleaned up by now. But you walk past where the fight was late last night with the rats and the half-green dragon boar. The boar is actually still there. They haven't had a chance to get a butcher out to butcher him up yet, and they're still not sure whether or not eating dragon boar meat is going to be a safe thing to do. So you walk past, spit on the body of the boar as you walk past. You continue on to the north. You're still on the path as you walk, roughly level with where the giant crow would be off to your right to the east. You get to the point of the path where the giant rat was when it turned tail and ran, and you hunters marked it just as it ran off into the forest, and you know that it's somewhere around here. So at this point you step off of the path and you walk into the undergrowth. Briar is, because of her tiny little status and the fact she's only 2 foot tall, Briar has a walking speed of only 20 feet. So she is relatively slow. Alright, I am going to roll for you don't want to cover that up with my phone. I'm trying to balance my phone with my torch on it because the light has gone out in my garage and you wouldn't be able to see the dice otherwise. Alright, so let me clear some space for myself here, and let me roll you a survival check. So this is going to be tracking the rat. Your hunter's mark is no longer active, it only lasts for an hour, so you don't have advantage on this roll. But because of your hunter's mark last night, I will be kind and lower the DC of what it would be. In order to set that DC, I need to know what sort of weather it is. What's it? Is it raining? Let's get my D10. Let's go with that one, sparkly one. It was raining yesterday, got drizzly in the evening. It started to knock off towards the... Ooh, nice, lucky for you. It was not raining overnight. And this morning it is still not raining. Let's have a look at the clouds though. Is it going to be raining later today? It is. It looks like there's still rain on the horizon. It's going to be getting rainy again slightly later in the day. But currently it is not raining, and it hasn't been raining since the rat came through, which is probably perfect conditions because A, it was raining before the rat ran through, which means it's more likely to have left tracks in mud and things like that. And it hasn't rained since then, so it hasn't washed them away. So perfect opportunities for tracking, which will lower the DC of where this rat has gone significantly. Alright, so survival check. 16 plus your survival modifier. You can see that you have 2 wisdom and proficiency in survival, so you've got a +5 to your survival. Plus, because you're in a forest and you're a ranger in your forest favoured terrain, you get dun, 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 forest bonus. There it is. You get a forest bonus of +2 as well, so you've got a +7 to survival checks in a forest. So 16 plus 7, 23, significantly above the DC for tracking this rat through this relatively wet, muddy undergrowth. You immediately find the tracks to where this giant rat had been and follow it without problem. You follow it for a good. Let's see, how fast would the rat be running? You follow it without trouble for the first half an hour of moving. We would definitely want our bee friend to land on a shoulder, right? That's up to you. Would you ask for Mel to land and be carried on your shoulder, because she is like, keep in mind she's the size of a potbelly pig. She's not like a little bee. You would theoretically be able to carry her. She is not. She is relatively light, but she is pretty big. But carrying her, although it would make your travel difficult, it would mean she's not as she's flying. So it's up to you. What do you think? Yes, you should ask Mel to land. Or no, you should not hinder your own movement. Having Mel on you will hinder your movement. It will essentially make everything, well, it's already going to be difficult terrain. It's going to make it even worse. We are already walking slowly to account for Briar. Mel has a walking speed of 10. If you had Mel just walk along the ground, then you'd be going even slower. Have Briar ride Mel and Mel ride us. Just a stack of rideables. Is there fog above the trees? This early morning, I'd say yes, probably. All right. What is the vote? Mostly coming in with yeses. A few no's. We'll say yes. She lands then. She's a bee. The forest is full of animal noises. Yep, but she's a giant bee, and so her noises are distinctly louder. Briar's only moving at 10 feet, and then she moves in difficult terrain. She would be moving at 5 feet per round. 10 feet if she dashes each round. Mel could send up high. That's another option. Get Mel like right up above the canopy entirely, so her buzzing is distinctly muffled by the sound, the leaves of the canopy. Does Apis have this feature where difficult terrain doesn't slow them in a forest? Well remembered, Lady Amarise. I believe they do. I believe that they have Natural Explorer, I think it's called, for a ranger. Let me look that up real quick. I think it's when you're traveling for an hour or more, difficult movement doesn't count as difficult terrain for you, or something like that. Ranger, let's have a look. Class features. Natural Explorer. You are particularly familiar with one type of natural environment and are adept at traveling and surviving in such regions. Choose one type of favoured terrain. We chose forest. When you make intelligence or wisdom checks related to your favoured terrain, your proficiency bonus is doubled if you're using a skill that you're proficient in. Ooh, proficiency bonus is doubled. So actually favoured terrain forest bonus is a +3 now. I thought it was a flat +2, but it's actually related to your proficiency. That's cool. So our survival checks are actually a minimum of a +8 to in our favoured terrain. While you're travelling for an hour or more in your favoured terrain, you gain the following benefits. Difficult terrain doesn't slow your group's travel. That's cool. Your group cannot become lost except by magical means. Even when you're engaged in other activity while travelling, such as foraging, navigating or tracking, you remain alert to danger. That's cool. If you are travelling alone, we are not. When you forage, you find twice as much food as you normally would, which is why I don't track rations. And while tracking other creatures, you learn their exact number, their sizes, and how long ago they passed through the area. Ooh, very useful. Thank you for reminding me, Lady Amarise. Very useful indeed. So, as we are walking for the first half hour, technically speaking, I guess none of this stuff applies yet because it's only after you've been walking in that terrain for like an hour. But I'll handwave that. It's fine. So we are travelling along. We obviously know the thing that we're tracking already. We know exactly what its size is and how many of it there is because it's one rat that we've been that we hunters marked. I'll say that after a while we do see that its tracks kind of meet up with the tracks of another, and so there might have been a couple of them that had kind of met up after about half an hour of walking. We are no longer slowed by the difficult terrain of the natural forest floor. We, as a ranger, well equipped with the forest, we can find the paths. We can pick out the paths that will lead us around bramble bushes and things without having to get snagged in them and slowed down. The whole group gets the benefit. Yeah, that's right. So Briar wouldn't be reduced to a speed of 10. And you won't be able to get lost except by magical means. So after you've been walking for about half an hour, you see that the giant rat has met up with another giant rat, and also you're recognizing that there's a few like squirrel prints and a few other smaller rodents, like natural rodents. There's a little hedgehog that comes snuffling out under a tree and then rolls up and kind of rolls back under a tree root out of sight. There's a few birds up in the trees that are twittering away and flying around. What do you want to do? Do you want to keep following? Do you want to roll stealth now? Do you want to do your pass without a trace at this point? Like at what point do you think you'll want to do your pass without a trace situation? Have you heard any noises? Let's roll a perception. See how perceptive you are being right now. Natural 1. Natural 1 plus your perception of... what did I say? 2 plus 6 because I'll allow forest bonus with you being in forest. So 7. Nope. 8, 9. 9. So 9 with your forest bonus. 9 perception. Still not the worst. But below half. Below the average. You listen out and you can hear regular forest noises. With a 9 perception, you can tell that you can sort of stop and listen, and there are faint sounds of snuffling and twigs snapping and things in the far distance. There's a few sounds of birds twittering in the trees and flights, and you can hear wind rustling through branches overhead. That's about all you can hear with a 9 on your perception. Question is how far we have to go. Unfortunately that is the question, Ads. You don't know. The dragon base is obviously close enough for him to fly the distance to town and terrorize the town and fly home. But for all you know, that could be miles, because dragons are very powerful and can fly for many hours without getting tired. Mel keeps buzzing, distracting us from hearing noises. That's probably part of it, yeah, Lauren. As Mel is sort of perched, holding her front 2 legs are over your shoulders, and she's like awkwardly hanging off the back, and it's not exactly comfortable for her. Thankfully, you hold you've got a backpack with all of this stuff in it, and so Mel's kind of like half perched on that, which means she's not like hanging directly off of your back. She's like perched onto the backpack. But every so often she'll like slip or readjust, and then which is making hearing things a little harder. Can we ask the bone dice for direction? You absolutely can if you want. Art of Ombo. Who is on board with the idea of asking the bone dice a question about like which direction to go or whether to use pass without trace now and things? Put a yes or a no in the chat. Most people saying no, don't bother using the dice. Alright, how about pass without a trace? At this stage, do we want to use pass without a trace? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Yes or no? We're a ranger in our favourite terrain. I say we keep tracking manually if we've lost the trail of where the hunter's mark led us. I think we avoid using resources just yet to use ritualistic speak with animals to ask distance directions. Yeah, ritualistic speak with animals could be a good idea. Oh, this one's mostly no's to using pass without a trace. There are a few yeses, but it's definitely leaning towards no. Save it till we're closer. Save the pass without trace spell. We'll immediately spend an hour tracking. You don't know. As far as you know, the lair could be like another 10 minutes walk from here. Primeval awareness sounds good for me, says Krold. Alright, so I think it looks like a no to pass without a trace right now. How about primeval awareness? So primeval awareness, for anyone who doesn't know, is it uses one of your spell slots, a first level spell slot, and then you can ask it, are there any X type of animal, type of creature, within Y number of miles from me? And because you're in your favourite terrain, you can specify up to 6 miles. So you could say, are there any dragons within 6 miles? And the answer would come back yes or no. It wouldn't tell you where, it wouldn't tell you how many. It would just tell you yes or no. There are dragons within 6 miles. You also don't know. If it pings hybrids or not, because you've yet to test that. That was one of the things you could have tested when you had a live half dragon rat in front of you. You could have used primeval awareness to to say, like, are there any dragons within a meter of me? And then test once and for all whether or not a half-green dragon pinged yes or no on that primeval awareness. But you didn't, so you don't know. This one's right down the middle, I think. There's a lot of yeses and nos on this primeval awareness, so I'm going to have to put this one to a proper poll. It's too hard to judge by that alone. So let me explain it for you, for those who don't know already. I will read it out exactly as is. You can use your action and expend one ranger spell slot to focus your awareness on the region around you. For 1 minute per level of the spell slot you expend, you can sense whether the following types of creatures are present within 1 mile of you, or within 6 miles if you're in your favoured terrain, which you are. You can specify aberrations, celestials, dragons, elementals, fae, fiends, or undead. In this situation, I imagine you're focused on dragons. Are there any dragons within? And then you can specify a range. Are there any dragons within a mile of me? Are there any dragons within a half mile of me? You can choose the radius up to 6 miles. This feature does not reveal the creature's location or number. It just pings yes or no. There are dragons or there are not dragons. And when I say dragons, it is the dragon type. Does it have the dragon type in its name? Things like if you had a sword of dragon slaying, would it do extra damage to that creature? Does it count as a dragon? How far do we travel in 1 hour? That is a good question back there. Let me reference my personalised DM screen on which I put distance covered travelling by terrain. So you are not doing a direct path, you are not doing cross country, you are in what I would call tricky wilderness. Tricky wilderness in 1 hour of travelling with a base walking speed of 20, because you're walking at Briar's base walking speed, is 1.5 miles per hour. You're covering 1.5 miles per hour and you've travelled for about half an hour at this stage. So you've travelled about 3/4 of a mile into the forest. The voters come back 2/3 no to 1/3 yes. So we are not going to use primeval awareness because 2/3 of Apis believes it to be a waste of a spell slot at this stage, not knowing whether or not it would ping on half dragons. Ritual casting, speak with animals. Alright, so that's another thing that's come up a couple times. Put a yes or a no, an up or a down in the chat if you want to ask Briar to cast Speak with Animals. Casting it as a ritual will not use her spell slots, but it will take an extra 10 minutes to cast. And by doing so, she will be able to speak with all of the animals of the forest and ask them questions about, like, hey, have you seen a rat go by here? Yes, 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 yes. This is unanimous. I don't see a single no in there. So at this point you say, she comes up behind you and says, what's the hold up? And you say, I'm just noticing that there's several, like, the rats we've been tracking have now been met by a few other animal tracks. I can see squirrels, other rodents, there's hedgehogs nearby, there's birds in the trees and what have you, and there's at least 2 of the giant rats. So, and she goes, is that a problem? And you say, it's not a problem, I'm just worried that we might be getting close now and I'm trying to decide whether or not it's worth going into stealth mode, as it were. And she says, right. And you say, would you be able to ask these animals a question? Like, can you talk to them? And she says, yeah, should I do that now? And you say, well, I mean, if you can do it as, like, if you can take your time to do it, right? She says, oh, I can cast it more carefully and it doesn't expend as much energy. Yeah, I think we should do that. She goes, are you sure? It takes about 10 minutes or so. And you say, yeah, that's fine, I think. And so you ask Briar to cast Speak with Animals ritually. I'm just going to double check that I'm getting everything right about the Speak with Animals spell. Can Apis actively listen for sounds of running water and stealth if hearing any to be safe while tracking, since we know there's a river near the lair? You can do, yes. You already did a perception check in this location though, and you got a 9. So you did not hear any running water with that check. Alright, so casting time of 1 action usually, meaning that it's going to take 10 minutes and 1 action. And for that 10 minutes, she will be able to comprehend and verbally communicate. Sorry, for the 10 minutes after it's cast, she will be able to comprehend and verbally communicate with beasts for the duration. Verbally communicate, not telepathically. The knowledge and awareness of many beasts is limited by their intelligence, but at minimum, beasts can give you information about nearby locations and monsters, including whatever they can perceive or have perceived within the past day. You might be able to persuade a beast to perform a small favour for you at the GM's discretion. So it doesn't give you any sort of charming effect over the beast. There are spells that she has that can do that. That'll force the beast to do your bidding or whatever. She won't be able to see through the beast's eyes or see in its memory or anything, but she'll just be able to communicate with it as if they're regular NPCs. So for 10 minutes, she sits down and starts to ritual cast this speak with animals spell. What are you doing for that 10 minutes that Briar is casting a spell? Have her ask various animals, birds, etc., if they know where the lair is. She could ask animal if there are rivers around us. Yeah, she could ask for the sources of rivers around us. You would also probably know that, like if you wanted to do like a nature check, you would probably be able to use either your intelligence or your wisdom to do a nature check to know, kind of, given the layout of the forest, where is the likelihood of the nearby rivers and things. While she's casting Send Mel above the trees. Alright, so you tell Mel, like, hey Mel, can you just take a quick once around above the trees just to see sort of general area? She goes, yes, of course. Above the tree line. The trees in this area, by the way, are relatively tall. They're like 50 feet tall-ish, and some of them like even taller. But the general like baseline of the canopy is about 40 to 50 feet up. Check the area, checking for dragon hybrid species, do a better perception check. Can we take 20 on perception? You can take 10 on perception, meaning you can take the 10 minutes that she's casting, you can take 10 minutes to like listen out. And taking 10 means that you're taking 10 minutes to do something, and by doing so, you don't need to roll for it, you just need, it's like you've rolled a 10 on the dice. And then you add your modifier as normal. So taking 10 on perception with your +2 wisdom and +6 from perception, you'd have a +8. So if you took the 10 minutes to just do a perception check, you'd essentially be getting a natural 18 you'd be getting a total 18 on a perception check if you wanted to. But that would be the 10 minutes of you listening out and looking and things. We need to keep both of us safe while she casts. I vote we use our disguise cloak to camouflage. Sure, you can do so for free anyway, so no big deal there. You changed your cloak into a more broken up camouflage, jungle camouflage sort of appearance. Can we ritually cast Primeval Awareness? I'm afraid not. No, it's not a spell that you're casting. It's your tap. You're using a spell slot, but it's not technically a spell. Also, even if it was a spell, rangers don't get ritual spells, I don't believe. Taking 10 actually sounds pretty good. That or praying to Ultimas. Praying to Ultimas would also be pretty useful. 10 for perception, 10 for perception. Yeah, most people saying take 10 for perception. Alright, so we take the 10 minutes. We already did perception in this location as just like a snapshot of what we're seeing in that moment, but I would allow, taking 10 on perception is a completely different thing because you're taking 10 minutes to like listen out carefully and walk around the area listening and looking out for stuff and more investigating, like what was that sound over there, and listening out for it again. Oh yeah, no. You're actually taking 10 minutes rather than just like a one roll snapshot of like what did you hear in that moment. So I'm fine with it. So you take 10 on perception as she's muttering and setting things out. I'll essentially allow Mel to take 10 for perception above the canopy as well. And with an 18 perception, you hear the same sounds as you heard with your regular check, but you also notice that there's probably fewer sounds than you would expect. You notice that it is a fairly quiet forest. You've been in a lot of forests in your time, especially as a hunter and an outlander. This forest is a little bit quieter than you'd expect. It's not entirely silent. It's no Diggins Temple. But there's significantly fewer animals in the forest, like there's a giant predator nearby. And when you think about that, you think about the fact that, oh, that's the sounds that are missing. It's the crunching of leaves and breaking of twigs far off. It's the sounds of large animals. It's the sound of game animals. It's the sound of wild boars, wild deer. It's the sound of the larger animals that is missing. You're still getting a lot of the sounds of the rodents and the birds, but you're not getting any sounds of giant boars or foxes and badgers, things that might be larger for a predator to eat. You also don't hear any flowing water nearby. About this time that you start to make this this decision, this revelation, you see this kind of flash of green over Briar's eyes as her spell finishes, and then she turns and says,
"Right, who are we gonna speak to then?"
Who do you want her to speak to? I mean, obviously she's an NPC and she can choose for herself, but you guys are leading the story here, so what's who would you like her to speak to first? Who would you suggest she speaks to? Birds? Songbirds, ideally? Alright, birds. So you, easily enough, with the both of you being very good with animal handling, you manage to persuade a bird to flutter down to you. Briar takes out a few berries and nuts and seeds that she always carries on her, specifically birdseed and stuff that she keeps on her, and she manages to sprinkle them on the ground and get these songbirds to come down, and sprinkles them on her feet and then up onto her hand. One of them tweets up onto her hand, tiny little dicky bird, like a wren, maybe a Jenny wren, lands on her hand. And she starts to twitter and speak to it in a language that you don't understand. She's speaking to it in a language the bird can understand. What would you like her to ask on your behalf? I'm envisioning Briar as a kind of mini Radagast, a little bit, with minus the bird crap down her face. Get her to ask, where is the green big bird? Have you seen a dragon? So she asks, and the bird looks up and eats some of the more of the berries. Flies off, and Briar says, "Huh. What's wrong?"
I think she seemed reluctant to talk to us. She was sort of happy enough to speak and like thanked me for the food and asked who I was and what I was doing here, sort of thing. And then I said, "Have you seen a dragon?" And then she immediately just said, "No dragon," and then took off, flew away. I think they're scared. She's gonna have to roll an animal handling. And the first one was kind of free because she's so good at animal handling, but now there's actually a chance of her failing. She's going to try again with an animal handling check. That's still sufficient. She manages to get another one down. Takes another couple minutes, but she's got a slightly larger bird this time. A wood pigeon has landed nearby, and it doesn't fly right up into her hand, but it stops nearby as it's cautious of us. And then she says, and it responds, and then it starts to back away, and she goes, and it stops, and then turns around and she goes, they're definitely reluctant to speak to us. They don't want to say things about it. That one just said we shouldn't be here and left. So what do you want? She's still got it for another 5-6 minutes. She's still got this spell going. You say, tell you what, let's try again. We can ask about a wood elf village and a river instead. Don't mention the dragon. We just ask, is there a wood elf village nearby? Is there a river nearby? Have we seen anybody living in the trees or waterfalls and things? Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
Alright, so you walk, you try a walking animal this time, like a hedgehog or a squirrel. Yeah, you walk over to a, let's say, which do we want? Hedgehog or squirrel or something else? Hedgehog, squirrel, mouse, some kind of rodent. What do we want? Hedgehog! Alright, hedgehog it is. We approach a hedgehog because she's tried twice and somewhat failed both times. Now it's going to be a slightly higher DC. There is a chance of failure. 18 though. 18 plus her animal handling modifier and stuff. She's she's still able to do it. Briar sort of gets down onto her hands and knees, and she sort of like walks forwards, and she's got some essentially like cat food in a little pouch on her side. She genuinely just is covered in little pouches and coin purses and things hanging off of pockets and stuff up on all down her the tunic that she wears. She's got a whole bunch of just animal feed essentially that she carries on her for giving to critters that she comes across. And she reaches into one of them and gets out like some mushed up meat, cat food style, and she like places it in front of this little hedgehog, out of its little root hidey hole, and its little nose peeks out, and then she and it snuffles out, goes over and starts nibbling on this meat, and you say, just don't mention the dragon. She goes, and she starts to just have a little wee conversation with it, and it eats and it points. It starts pointing its nose in directions and things. I'm just going to roll an intelligence check for this hedgehog to see how much it knows of the area around. Lucky for you, it rolled really well. So it eventually, she has this conversation for a good like minute and a half, and then she sort of backs up and says, "There's a river nearby, about a few. Well, not good with directions, especially on our scale. But he says it's quite a far walk to the north of here." And then there's a big, lots of river noise, but he doesn't go that way because there's animals that'll eat him. Much more big animals and things live around the water. And the hedgehog kind of, and then scurries away back under his little root hole. He also said he was very tired because he's about to go to sleep as a nocturnal animal, and we've just kind of kept him up a little bit. Whatever you do, don't say dragon. Don't mention the dragon. Why are we interested in the river and elf villages? So that was one of the things that we learned from... we have already interrogated a half-green dragon rat about his daddy, Lucifric, and he told us that his daddy lives near a waterfall and has a wood elf village nearby that he keeps as prizes. He keeps the wood elves there as prizes. So if you can find the wood elf village or the waterfall, that's also a way of finding his lair. A far walk for his tiny feet might not be far for us, though. That's correct. And from that, you can probably intuit that if it's close enough that this particular hedgehog would know about it. I don't know what the migratory range of a hedgehog is, but I can't imagine it's that far. If it's a far walk but close enough for the hedgehog to know about it, it's probably within a short walk for us, or a medium walk for us. Can we ask why they are so scared, and is there something we can do to help, like anything? Who do you like, to the hedgehog, or do you want to ask somebody else that, Similson? You're paranoid now that the bird is an ark. Very possible. Are the wood elves on his side? We don't know. We've only heard hearsay that the wood elves even exist. Can Briar walk and ritualistically cast at the same time? No, she has to. There has to be like she has to create for herself a mini druid circle essentially on the ground, and then put out like herbs and incense and things. And it's an ordeal. Can we ask Mel what she saw? So Mel buzzes back down at this point. And says, "What is the deal? What is happening then?" You say, "What did you see?" And you say that in Sylvan, obviously. And she says, "Well, there is what's Mel's perception when she took 10? What would she have seen?" She says, "There is I'm trying to picture the map now in my head. There are the mountains to the far east of here, and the woods seem to stretch on for as far as I can see in every direction. Otherwise, there is a brief break to the south, which is, I imagine, where the town is that we just came from.
and otherwise it is just forest in every direction. The forest gets a little taller, it seems, or maybe the land is coming up to meet it. I don't know, but the forest is getting taller towards the sort of east north areas, and just expansive and wide, and I could not see anything. A few birds fly above the trees from time to time, but not much. Time to head back until the night so we can head out in force, I think. Maybe. Like, ask the birds. What were we going to ask the birds? Oh, why they're so scared. We can try and do so, yeah. So you ask Mel, you ask Bri, say, are you able to talk for a little while longer? And she goes, maybe only another, like, couple of minutes, I think. I can feel it starting to wear off. You say, right, let's see if we can get one more bird down. Let's move a little bit away from this area, try and find a bird that we haven't talked to. Now, because this is the fourth attempt at getting a bird down, the DC is rising each time, so she's going to try again. 8 plus her modifier. Briar, from my memory, it's right on the cusp. I'll say that you can see that she is not being that successful, so you're going to try and help us as well. You're going to assist. You assist by sending Mel away, for one thing, and you assist by sort of like stepping away yourself a little bit as well, so that there's fewer potential bad guys in the area. Yeah, that'll do. 17 plus stuff. So with much reluctance, she manages to get down one more bird. This one is. Give me a native British bird. Somebody. We've used a pigeon. We've used a wood pigeon. We've used a wren. What is it? It's not really the. Would it be a robin? Robin. There we go. I thought of robin just as you did, Fancy. So a little robin redbreast comes fluttering down eventually, and pokes around and is very curious and scared. But Brian manages to. And eventually flies up onto a branch nearby, and Briar's like stepped right back. Says, "I'm asking why." Irish. She says, "I'm asking why they're so scared, right? And if there's anything we can do." Says, and the robin responds. And then flies off. And Briar turns and says, "He said he's not scared. He said that it's us that should be scared." And then just as she says this, her 10 minutes are up. So what are we going to do with that information? Is that exactly the same as the other bird said? No. They've all told you slightly different things, but not contradictory things. I think we should pass without trace and look for the river. You should call an ambulance. But for you! The robin pulls a little gun on us. Call an ambulance. For you! Alright, pass without a trace, yes or no? Pass without a trace, yes. Pass without a trace, no. Thumbs up, thumbs down. We should stealthily reposition and hide to see if something comes to find us. That bird is the dragon. It's too smart. Run! Don't trust the birds. Birds are always the spies. Alright, most people saying yes to the pass without a trace. There are a couple of no's, but everybody else overwhelmingly a yes. So you say, listen, Briar, I feel like these birds are knocking on us. I think they're spies. I don't feel safe just staying here in the open anymore, and I think we're close enough that it's worth doing now. I'm going to help us with the with staying a little more hidden, but you need to stay within 30 feet of me at all times. Okay, stay close for the next hour. We can't avoid to Mel, and you call down to her and you give her the hand signals that you've worked out with her to understand what you want her to do. You give her the one for come close. And Mel flies down to within 30 feet, and you explain that to her and Sylvan as well. Listen, I'm going to help us out here, but you need to stay within close range of me. Like you see like that branch there.
You need to be within this side of that branch, like that distance from me to that branch. You need to stay within that range of me, okay? I'm going to roll an intelligence check for Mel using her honey dice here. I'm going to see how well she understands the distances that you're trying to explain to her. Alright. She goes, right away. Of course. And then you will focus in on the shadows of the forest. Being that it is early morning and getting closer and closer to noon, by this point you've been about an hour, so it's probably about 9ish in the morning. The sun is coming up to the east over the mountains, so the sun is probably now more directly hitting the forest, but even so, with the oblique angle that it's coming in on, a lot of it's getting absorbed by the trees and the leaves. So you are in dim light in the forest under the forest canopy, which helps for your tapping into the shadows and the silence that were gifted to you by the god of deception, Gamison, recently. You take a couple of deep breaths and you close your eyes. You think about that silence. You can hear the sounds of the birds twittering getting quieter as more of them have sort of taken off from around you, and that's why it was getting harder to convince one to come down to you, is because after you've talked to the first few and they've got scared and ran off, or for whatever reason flew off, there are fewer and fewer of them around, and you use that silence and you feel it within yourself. You can hear Mel's buzzing from 10-20 feet overhead, and it's getting significantly quieter. You also feel a slight chill over your body as you look down, and you can see that some of the shadows from the trees have kind of like repositioned themselves subtly in your direction, offering you more shadows. And the ones around Briar, the bushes around Briar seem to have like repositioned themselves just subtly around her, not in like a major way, but they've subtly repositioned themselves over her person. So when you open your eyes, it's almost like it takes you double take to even see where she is now. Tiny little 2-foot halfling hiding in bushes. And as you cast Pass Without a Trace, you lose one of your second level spell slots, but you do gain for the next hour, whilever you concentrate on it, you gain a +10 to your stealth checks. Stick to Sylvan all times when talking. Tell Briar to do the same. The dragon knows common. Good idea, Sparrow. You turn to Briar and you say in a hushed whisper, you say in a word, in a voice that you're already whispering and comes out as even quieter, and you realise you can sort of raise the volume of your voice a little bit because the spell is magically, what's the word? Muffling your voice anyway. You say to Briar in Sylvan, listen, I think we should only converse in Sylvan from now on. The dragon knows common, but I don't know that it knows any other languages like this, so it'll be safer for us. And you relay the same to Mel, who buzzes right down to right over your shoulder. She's just kind of buzzing here now. Now it's the best time for Briar to be a horse, so we can make the best time while we're hard to spot. Let's look for the river. Alright, ask Briar to become a horse so that we can make some pace while we've got this Pass Without a Trace on. Yes? No? Horses make too much noise? Horses under undergrowth would make quite a bit of noise. We do have Pass Without a Trace, and we have the ranger ability of not counting as difficult terrain, so that would count for something. But being a horse, it would mean that she is significantly noisier than she would be as a 2-foot halfling. Yes or no, yes or no. This one's a little bit more even, a little bit more right down the middle this time. It's not as clear cut, so I'm going to have to put it as a poll. Briar horse, question mark? Rather keep her being a horse for a fast exit. She does have 2 uses of wild shape without needing to take a short rest, so if you wanted to, she could do it now and still have 1 for the fast exit, but she obviously wouldn't be able to use anything in the meantime. We could have her turn into a mini horse. Yeah, she'd only have to turn into a horse of a size that we can ride as a dwarf. I mean,
smaller in height than regular folk, human folk, I should say. But we are stockier than a human. We are about the same weight as a human, even though we're a lot shorter. We're a lot more the bigger boned. Dwarves have got a lot more musculature and a lot more bones to them. Just heft. They're just heftier people. Yes, also keep in mind, good point, S2 Saint, keep in mind that Pass Without Trace is not invisibility. It's a +10 to your stealth, and you are significantly stealthier, but if you walk right in front of somebody, they'll still see you. You just might creep up on them until the point where you're like right here, and then they'll go, holy oh, wow, I didn't see you there, sorry, didn't see you coming. Horse is not going to outrun a dragon. Nope, we did outrun a half-dragon boar, though. So we have done this horse tactic in one of the previous episodes. She could be a direwolf. Direwolves would definitely be quieter than a horse. Don't know if she'd have seen a direwolf. She'd have seen into it. She'd have seen a wolf. She might have seen a direwolf. Could Briar turn into Mel? She could turn into a giant bee. Oh, no, she can't actually, because she's not at the level where she can fly yet. She can't turn into flying animals. Alright, with 83% of the vote, Briar is not going to become a horse. Briar asks us, should I become a horse that you can ride, or some sort of riding animal? And you say, no, not yet. There's benefit to that, but I don't think it might be a bit too loud if you're a horse. Could we ride her as a wolf? Not as a regular wolf, I'm afraid. Now, if you were a halfling or a goblin or a gnome, you could ride a wolf, but you're too big and stocky as a dwarf to ride a wolf. You could if she was a direwolf. We can't handle a dragon and all of his children with just the three of us. I think we need to go back and tell the knights what we know. This mission is for reconnaissance only, and I don't think a horse could outrun a dragon. Alright, so what do we think to the idea of, like, that's enough, go back and tell people? Have you got enough to report on? So, yes, you should leave it there and go back to the town of Fondurg and tell them what you know so far. No, keep going. Like, this whole mission is to know information that the town can know. And what do we know so far? Do we know enough? No. Alright, so no, we do not know enough yet, Sparrow, sorry. So, as you've cast Pass Without a Trace, what is your plan? Is it just to walk? Anything else? Are you just going to walk in the direction that the hedgehog gave us? Keep following these tracks? Keep following the hedgehog's direction? We've only learned that the wildlife is hostile, yeah. And that was somewhat speculative based on one robin and what they said. Stealth towards the water. Alright, so let's roll a stealth check for you as you are going to stealth your way forwards. I will roll one for you. I'll roll this one for Mel off camera. So this is your stealth check. 15 plus. This is going to be a lot. 15 plus 3 from your dex takes it to 18. Plus 3 from your stealth takes it to 21. Plus 3 from your forest bonus, which I allow for stealth checks as well, takes it to 24. Plus 10 from Pass Without a Trace takes it to 34. You got a 34 on your stealth check. Thankfully for you, I rolled when I rolled for Mel's intelligence check to see if she understood how close she has to stay to you. She got a 19 plus a stealth modifier of negative, so it's still okay. So Mel thankfully was smart enough to understand that she has to stay real close to you. So Mel will stay within the range of Pass Without a Trace for the whole time. So for Mel, she has disadvantage on stealth. Oh, okay. And Briar is... yeah. Okay, so as you walk, you are staying super stealthy. Like, impossibly stealthy. The leaves are not crushing beneath your feet, that sort of stealthy. Like, you are stepping on twigs and they are just sort of like bending. The magic that is granted you by Gamison, the god of deceit, it allows for dried out twigs to sort of mould and bend under your weight rather than snap. And dried out, crisped up leaves. Not that there are too many dried out, crisped up leaves, given that it is approaching summer. But the odd leaf, it suddenly is revitalized into a state where it doesn't crack. It just sort of molds out of your way as you step on it. You're just moving slowly and stealthily. Behind you,
very quietly as well. You can barely hear her. You keep having to turn to check that she's actually keeping up with you. You can see your companion Briar, who is walking slowly through the forest. Again, the twigs and things moving aside from her, bushes and stuff moving aside quietly around her. She's not quite as quiet as you, but still very quiet. And then Mel is buzzing. Mel is within range and she's causing noise, but it's still much quieter buzzing than you're used to around her. Even though she's staying like 15 feet back from you, down on your level, and about 15 feet behind you, just like right behind Briar. She's still buzzing, but it's sort of the sound of a regular-sized bee somewhere within like 5 feet of you. It's that kind of noise. It's like a regular bee rather than like a giant potbelly pig sized bee only 15 feet back. It's a lot quieter, but it is still noticeable. So as you walk forwards, you start to notice that the terrain around you is getting more difficult. And although as a ranger in your favourite terrain, you can see that this terrain you can usually pick paths through it relatively easily. You're also noticing that this terrain is increasing in brambles and thickets. There are thickets of undergrowth that is getting thicker and more coarse and harder to push through until eventually you're getting into points where you have to backtrack on yourself because you've walked down like a little valley, tiny little valley between like a couple of tree mounds, and it's gotten thick between those trees on either side until you get to the end of that like valley thing, and there's just like almost a solid wall of thickets, and there's a couple of smaller parts for between the brambles for insects and rodents and things running through them, but something of your size or even something of Briar's size now. So you turn round and you start to walk backwards and retrace your steps. The lair effect of a green dragon, yes. You start to move back around various trees, find different paths to stay in that general direction. As a ranger, you're very good at telling, especially as the time goes on now. It's getting towards 10 o'clock in the morning. It's not quite 10. You've been walking another like half hour after your Pass Without a Trace had started. And you realise that while the hedgehog said it was a far walk for him, and so it's relatively close for something of your size, you do also now notice that the hedgehog is probably not that inconvenienced by these thickets and brambles and stuff, so he would be able to take a more direct line north of here. So a far walk for you is probably a far walk for him as well, because it's just that you have to go a very circuitous route. So you're moving around these thickets, trying to stay in that direction, worried that your Pass Without a Trace may be running out. When I need you to make a perception check for me. All right, that is behind my head an 8. 8 plus your perception of 8 in this with the forest bonus and everything is 16. With a 16, you hear at some point you're getting into like almost like a corner, it's almost semicircular, but not quite all the way around. It's like a corner that's sort of pushing you off to the left of these like tall thickets, and almost like an unnatural, a wildly growing hedge maze sort of situation. And as you are being pushed round towards the left, you hear a large snapping of trees, a large snapping of smaller twigs and smaller branches nearby, and coming out of into a bit of a clearing-ish area to your left, so to sort of the west area. You see some bushes being pushed aside and things, and as a creature walks forwards, it sounds like the sounds that you're used to hearing as a hunter. You're used to hearing the telltale signs of larger game nearby. It sounds like large game, and as you turn to see, you see a large red deer. You see a large red deer with its relatively small antlers, and down the snout of this red deer is a line of greenish scales that runs back past some reptilian eyes, and past its red deer
ears. And the red deer sort of brushes into the clearing where you are and starts to eat at some grass nearby. And it doesn't seem to have seen you or Mel or anyone. And you see this red deer. It's slightly larger than a red deer, but not to the point where you'd be like, that's a giant red deer. How close to us? It's probably about 60 feet away. It doesn't seem to have noticed you. It's just a half green dragon red deer. Looks almost Christmassy with its green and red. Can we hunter's mark it stealthily? We can hunter's mark it, but as somebody pointed out in the chat there, the pass without a trace spell that we have is a concentration spell. Hunter's mark is also a concentration spell. I think. Let me just double check that. Pretty sure hunter's mark is concentration, isn't it? Hunter's mark. Hunter's mark, concentration. You can only concentrate on one spell at a time. So if you cast hunter's mark on it, which you could do, you would drop pass without a trace, and you'd lose your plus 10 bonus to your stealth checks. A lot of people saying sneak away, like get away from it. Yes, you want to sneak away from it. No, you want to wait here and wait for it to leave. Make a note of its location. It's a large creature. It needs to pass through the brambles. We should track it. We could magic rope it and tie it up if we wanted. Yeah. Homer Simpson into the nearby bush. Follow it afterwards. Would our nature survival be stretching to think that the dragon is shape changing into members of these animals? Yes. Yeah. Our knowledge of dragons as our favoured enemy is high enough that we know that some dragons can shapeshift. And with all of these hybrids, how he's doing it is he's shapeshifting into that animal and then breeding with the respective animal at seemingly a prolific rate, because there's a lot of them. Quite a interesting. I think we're leaning much more. Yeah, we're leaning much more heavily towards no. We're not gonna stealth away. I think it's worth. There's not enough people voting in the chat, so it's worth putting a poll there so I get a distinct answer. Can a green dragon breed with humans too? I will allow you an intelligence check, an arcana check. You've got advantage because they're your favoured enemy, and you got a 19. 19 plus your arcana. You're not proficient in arcana, so it's straight intelligence, so that is a 22. With a 22, you're pretty sure that there's no reason why a green dragon being able to shapeshift into a beast should be specific to beasts. Like, you're pretty sure that green dragons should be able to shapeshift into humanoids, theoretically, as well. You could try Primeval Awareness now that there's a hybrid in range. It's a good idea, actually. Krolled, I'll put that to a vote in a second. Alright, with 81% of the vote, people saying no, we're not going to stealth away from this deer. We're gonna either stay here or go towards it, which we'll check in a moment. The next vote, though, you can just vote with a thumbs up or a thumbs down in case we get an overwhelming majority, is should we use Primeval Awareness with a range that is just enough to see this deer, and therefore test at the cost of one first level spell slot whether or not a hybrid pings. Put a thumbs up yes if you do want to use Pass Without a Trace, put a thumbs down no if you don't. Ooh, this is staying about 50-50. I think this is going to have to go to a proper poll by the looks of it. Alright, 57% of the vote saying no, we're not going to use Pass Without a Trace. You did it again. We're not going to use Primeval Awareness on this deer right now because we need the spell slot, and we don't want to put ourselves in Schitt's Creek without a paddle, as it were. Up Schitt's Creek without a spell slot. So what is the option then? Bone dice? What would we be asking the bone dice exactly? Would be asking the bone dice if it's a good idea to follow this deer. That could be one of the things to do it. So the thing with augury is you put to the dice a plan that you have, a plan of action, or a question that can have a yes/no answer or something like that. Yes/no answer or a plan of action, and you can ask the dice and roll, and you will get a somewhat vague answer that gives you a feeling of good or a feeling of bad, or somewhere in between. So thumbs up if you want to ask the bone dice something, thumbs down if you don't want to ask the bone dice something right now. Alright, this is a pretty overwhelming no. We're not going to ask the bone dice anything right now. We just want to stay here. So we're not going to run away. We're not going to use Primeval Awareness. We're not going to ask the bone dice anything. So what are we going to do? Are we going to wait for this creature to make the first move? Are we just going to watch, wait and follow? Wait and follow, wait and follow, wait and follow. Okay. Briar could morph into the hybrid deer. So Briar can't morph into hybridized animals. She can only become beasts that she has seen. And this one is a hybridized. At the most, it would be like a magic beast, and she can't really do those. Like, for instance, she wouldn't be able to do a displacer beast. Even though it's a beast per se, it's more like a fey beast, so she can't really do it. Alright, seems like most of Apis wants to just wait and watch, but for no more than 5 minutes, because our Pass Without a Trace is eventually going to run out. So as we wait and watch, we kind of like hold our hand up and then point it out, and Mel comes down and lands on the ground and watches and waits. We watch and wait as it eats its way around like the base of a tree, snuffling around some weeds and things, sticking its nose in stuff. We see a little dicky bird come down and land on its antlers and doesn't seem to mind. We're just watching except for the green scales up its face and down the back of its neck. Seems like it would just be acting like a regular deer. It's eating away, and there's a bird landing on it, hops around its head a little bit, starts picking at parasites around its ears, and then flies off and keeps eating it's starting to come your way. It's getting a little bit closer. It's getting like 40 feet from you. Does the bird tell the deer about us? I mean, you can make a perception check, see if it does. See if you can hear anything from the bird. Is the bird's grassing? I haven't heard the term grassing in a while, S2 saying. It's grassing on us! That bird's grassing! Hey, nat 20. So with a nat 20 on your perception check, plus your forest bonus of +8 on perception, you get a 28 perception there. The dicky bird isn't one of the woods, the birds that we spoke to. Flies down. The bird is definitely making sounds when it's on this deer's head. It's making like bird sounds, and that's what you can tell with a perception check. You don't speak bird, and you can't tell whether or not it's like telling the deer anything. But the bird is seemingly acting like a normal bird. It pecks at parasites within the deer's fur. The bird doesn't have any green scales or anything on it. It just seems like a regular bird, and then flies away. A bunch of Apis's mind going like firing off, being like, "I've got a bad feeling about this. That bird's telling on us. It's about 20 feet away though, and then it seemingly doesn't come any closer towards us. It sort of keeps just like doing its thing, and then turns around gradually and walks back the way it came, and disappears not exactly into the same bush, but it disappears out of another bush in the clearing, a little bit more around to the sort of like the slightly to the southwestish of this particular clearing. It didn't seem to. If the bird did tell the deer anything, the deer didn't act like it did get told anything. Rob wouldn't talk about a bird if it wasn't crucial. Have you not seen anything I've done before Lord of the Cookies? I'm always including tidbits of information. I included a locket in a cupboard in some guy in the middle of the woods house that had no relevance to the plot, and ended up coming up, and I had to improvise an entire backstory for this locket because I just came up with a locket to fill out the scene. I was just doing description. Alright, so you've got about 15 minutes of Pass Without a Trace left, and the deer is leaving the clearing. He'd also just include the bird to watch his sweat. That is also a thing I would do. If I'd have thought that you were going to make a big thing of the bird, I probably would have included it just anyway. So, follow the deer, yes or no? Have Mel ride on us for extra stealth? Okay. You give Mel a signal and she up onto the back. Follow the deer, follow the deer, follow the deer. Follow the leader. For two different species to communicate, they would need to share a language, right? Briar has to speak bird to the birds, etc. Yes. So the bird would need to speak deer or draconic to be understood by the deer. Yes. Most likely. We're a ranger in our favoured terrain, following our favoured enemy. Follow the tracks. Alright, there's an overwhelming yes, we are going to follow. We're going to follow at a safe distance. I'm going to re-roll our stealth checks, because now that we've stopped for several minutes and we're going to start again, it is time for a new check. So, stealth check for Apis. A new stealth check. That is a 6. 6 plus your stealth of, what was it, 6? So 12 stealth plus 10 from Pass Without a Trace takes it to 22. 22 stealth. Unless you want to re-roll it with a inspiration or lucky horseshoe, you're getting a 22. Mel is getting a... with disadvantage because of her... Oh no, she's no longer disadvantage because she's riding you. So she is getting a... Okay. And Briar gets significantly more than you this time. Love me some Pass Without a Trace. It is a good one. It is useful. Plus 10 to stealth is just like so unbelievably high. We are heavier now because Mel's on our back, yes, which is slowing us down, but Briar is slowing us down anyway, so it's fine. So we follow at a distance, slowly and stealthily. Mel is being about as loud as she was before. In fact, exactly as loud as she was before. It's the same number. But she's at least on your backpack and keeping close to you now. Briar is significantly quieter. There's a couple of times just like that your foot will slip off a rock and there'll just be like just like a little involuntary sound you make, or like a clattering of a small pebble or something, just very minor things. But mostly being very quiet. You're able to track this deer without even needing a roll. It's relatively wet ground still, and it's a large animal, and it's pushing through branches and things. At some point, though, after about 10 minutes, with like 5-ish minutes of your Pass Without a Trace left, there is a noise from behind you, like a snapping of something, like a branch has snapped from a tree. This seems to spook the deer ahead. You're staying away from it, but close enough that you can keep it in sight, sort of thing, and keep tracking it whenever you lose vision of it. And the deer seems to be spooked and sets off at a bit of a run. And it seems to be moving at a much faster pace. What do you want to do? Mental note to self: get a nice perch made for Mel, like a harness situation you can wear with like a sticking out board at the back that Mel can just ride on. Look behind us, see what made the noise. All right, so you spin around and you look, and to be clear, it wasn't like right next to you or right behind you. It was just somewhere in the nondescript distance behind you. You turn around and look for it, and you can see that there is a branch that's kind of hanging limply from a tree nearby, and it does seem to be a dead branch. It seems like the tree is probably old and sick, and the branch is relatively rotten. So there's a chance that it just happened to snap about now, or it could be that something snapped it. What do you want to do? It's about the branch is about 50 to 80 feet behind you. Look up, something following us through the tree branches. Let's make a perception check for you. 3 plus your perception in a forest with forest bonus is plus 8, so that's an 11. With an 11 you look up, you can see that there's a few birds that have taken flight from the snapping branch sound. There's a few squirrels that have run up trees and things to avoid the snapping branches and stuff. But other than the small animals and critters of the forest, you don't see anything large flying through the canopy or anything. Can we do a knowledge check of whether it broke naturally? Yeah, in 5th edition it's called a nature, an intelligence check rather than knowledge. But you're going to do a nature check on this branch. It's from a distance, so the DC is higher. The branch is a fair distance away from you, so unless you want to retrace your steps, go back closer to it, putting even more distance between you and the deer that you're following, then the DC is it's going to be higher. And your intelligence is a plus 3. You're not proficient in nature, so that's just an 8. So from here, it looks like a slightly rotting branch that could have broken naturally. You're not sure. This could be an ambush. It could be an ambush. It could be that Rob's trying to make you paranoid. It could be a double bluff, that Rob's trying to make you paranoid so that you think Rob's just trying to make me paranoid when it's actually an ambush. Do we notice anything about the squirrels? None of them seem to be green. They all seem to be regular squirrels. Why would a deer hybrid run from a snapped branch? Should have turned and fought. No, deers are known to be quite flighty animals. It's going to run from the sound of a sudden snapping or a gunshot, as it were. Probably follow the deer's tracks pretty easily. Investigate. This synapse is paranoid, wants to go home. I want to go home. So they're trapped. The dragon has spies and knows we're coming. Follow the deer. Was one of the victims that disappeared a druid? Yes, one of them was a druid, yes. I think follow the deer. I feel like we've fallen for a red herring. Maybe. A red deer, a red herring. All right, follow the deer. Yes or no? Because of the ranger feature, we will remain alert to danger while tracking. Correct. Boars and crows are quite flighty as well, and this deer's too relaxed. It's luring us. Maybe. Overwhelming yeses for following the deer. So you turn, you sort of stay there for a moment longer, making sure that nothing else catches your eye. The branch having come to a rest now. And then you turn and you start to put the trust in the stealth, the pass without a trace that you have. And as you walk forwards, you continue searching for the tracks of the deer. Easy enough to find them, especially from a startled animal. There's a lot more mud kicked up by the hooves. You follow it for about another 3 or 4 minutes, meaning that you can sense that pass without a trace is like a matter of seconds from ending. When you can start to hear the sounds of a wounded deer, and as you sort of approach, there is a break in the trees where there is like a bit of a mound up and over, and you can tell that the dirt has been disturbed as something large has sort of run over this mound. And then cresting up the mound a little bit, you can see that there is a bit more of it's not exactly a cliff, but it's a relatively steep hill. And there is the sound of a wounded deer at the bottom of this hill. You want to get closer? You want to turn around? What do you want to do? Recast Pass Without a Trace? Pass Without a Trace, yes or no? We still have Pass Without a Trace on, but we can tell that it's about to end. Get closer. If the deer is injured, cast Cure Wounds on it to try and get in good with whoever's following us. How did it injure itself? By running? Maybe I wasn't clear enough. It has charged away from a dangerous sound, and then it's gone up and over a hill and didn't realise that the other side of this little mound was a very steep hill, and it seems like the deer might have slipped and down into the bottom. You're not at the hill yet, you can just tell that the mound is going up, and then because you can't see trees immediately on the other side of it, you can tell that it's a steep drop. You're a forest ranger, you know terrain of the terrain of a forest. So you can tell, you can't see down the bottom of this hill, you can't see the deer, but you can tell that there is a hill that the deer has apparently fallen down. Pass without a trace, or yes or no? Let's put it to a poll because I didn't get many people answering. Rob, a very long time ago in episode 5, Apis dreamt of a deer that had scales. Is this connected? I don't know. Is it? With 56% of the vote, Apis votes to not renew Pass Without a Trace. So what do you want to do? You are standing before a rising mound on which you can see deer tracks running up it, and then because of the terrain that you can see, or rather the terrain you can't see, just on the other side of this rising mound of dirt, you can see that you can tell from your knowledge of forests that there is a rather steep drop on the other side of this hill. The mound could be the back of the lair. any of the part of the forest could be the back of the lair. It's not like there's like a defining border to his lair, I suppose. Or maybe there is. Sneaky peek over the mound. Run away! Climb down to the deer. Carefully peek over the mound. Alright, a few people saying carefully peek over the mound. Look over the mound. Look over the mound. We came to scout for info. What's with all the chickening out people? Alright, so we look over the mound, as many people are saying. We will approach the mound and stealthily, still with the same stealth roll as before, we approach the mound and look down, and we can see as we approach that it's more of a it's like soft dirt that we're standing on, and then as it approaches and we crest over to look down, we can see that it is indeed a very deep steep slope. But it is not like a ravine, it's not like a valley. It's more like a sinkhole. Because it's a deep slope on this side, it's not very wide. A deep slope all the way around it, and a deep slope onto the other side of it as well. And you do see a deer down there. The deer is lying down at the bottom of this sinkhole, with its legs kind of curled up beneath it, and it is braying in sort of like this injured deer kind of way. I'm not really sure how deer sound, so I'm not going to try and replicate it now. But as you approach and you sort of look down, Briar comes up behind as well, and she looks down and she's all concerned because she's primarily very animal focused. And as she comes up beside you onto the mound, the two of you feel the dirt beneath your feet start to rumble and shake very violently. And I need a dexterity saving throw from you, please. Dexterity saving throw from you was a 6, plus your dexterity is 3, plus another 3 from your proficiency. That's a 12. From Briar, actually pretty good. Ooh, not quite. So, as the ground bursts out from beneath your feet and you feel the soft dirt give way to large green dragon mole claws, which pushes up. It pushes the two of you forwards. You try and reach out and grab anything that you can grab a hold of. It slips from beneath your grasp and you go tumbling down the hill. Apis. What's my fall damage? Fall damage table. That was a nice life. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Apis, you take 7 points of fall damage as you slam down, tumbling and boom, 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 stumble and slam down onto the ground at the base of what is essentially a 25-foot pit. The Briar comes tumbling down as well, slams down face first, prone on the ground at the bottom of this pit. The deer, as soon as you do so, stands up, turns around, and stands facing both of you on 4 uninjured legs. And the mole comes to the top of the pit and looks down and seems to be grinning with a devilish grin. You also hear from up above the rim of the pit.
I've always been fond of squirrels. So unassuming, so common. Great mobility.
As a squirrel comes to the top of the thing, just a regular looking squirrel, comes to the top of the pit. And then the squirrel seems to grow in size, larger and larger, as the face elongates and the neck grows snake-like and serpentine. The back shoulder blades sprout wings, and before long, this green-scaled young dragonborn Lucifreak is standing at the top of the pit, looking down on you, alongside its green dragon mole friend, and down there in the pit with you, a green dragon red deer.
Thank you for bringing my next apology prize to me, right here to my home. It saves me the trip. Though, which one of you is the gift, and which is the gifter, is unclear for now.
What do you want to say? I think we have enough information now. Let's head back to town. What character does everyone want to play next? Can we horizon step with Mel and Briar? No. You can misty step just yourself. Dimension Door is the spell that allows you to take somebody with you. Briar is the gift. I am the gift. The deer is the gift. We are the gifter. Clever girl. Told you we were going to lose Briar, but you said you wouldn't listen. I said it was a trap. The top of the pit is 25 feet up, and you can misty step 30 feet. So you can misty step out of this pit. It is a 2nd level spell slot to do so. Do you want to do that, or do you want to talk with this guy first? Because you can misty step to the top of the pit. You'd still be standing on the rim of the pit, with the dragon on one side and the mole on the other. If Briar is a slug or another small animal, can she misty step with us? No, that's not how it works. So, he's just said, thank you for bringing me my next gift. Although which one of you is the gift and which is the gifter is unclear. What do you want to do? What do you say? What do you do or say, or how do you handle this? I'm just out for a walk, Gov. Briar could transform into a small enough animal to hitch a ride on Mel. She could. Mel, however, is still up at the top of the pit. She wasn't standing on the ground. Well, she was actually riding on you, wasn't she? So as you fell, Mel would have gone, and she would be sort of hovering essentially around the mouth of the pit, like right at the top level with these two creatures. She would have jumped off of your back to... You know enough, Rojo Vendetta, to know that the deer is not going to be accepted as a gift. The deer is one of his children, and was quite clearly in on the ambush, given that he was faking an injury and has now stood up to face you. What speed is a druid's transformation? It takes an action, so it's the best part of 6 seconds. Why does this look concerningly lot like an either Briar or Apis kind of scenario? Because that's exactly what it is. He is saying, one of you is a gift to me that will be staying here. That's basically all he's said right now. You say in Draconic, Lucifreak, what is it you desire from the town? And he says,
I thought I was clear on that. You killed my children. I will take deference from you. Treasures and children of yours, until I am satisfied that you are being properly respectful to me. And don't worry, one of you can leave here today. After all, one of you must tell the mayor what you've discovered, right? You must tell him of how you were once again outsmarted, and how your pathetic attempts to deceive or out-strategize me will continue to fail. You must survive to tell your pathetic town that I showed you mercy, and how I can be a very forgiving God if you simply fall in line.
And as he says those last words, it's punctuated with green smoke coming out the sides of his mouth. And his head kind of like juts downwards on the end of his serpentine neck into the pit, and then back up again. Expedite the entire interaction from our point of view and explain we offered food and they tried to kill us and forced us to defend ourselves. We even saved Darren's life. Listen, your children had it coming. They were the ones who started this fight, not me. I offered them food. I thought they were hungry. And as soon as I offered them food, they attacked. I was defending myself.
Yes, and it seems they were stupid to pick a fight with something they couldn't possibly outmatch. You would never do something so stupid, would you?
Your father's much more intimidating than you. Make an insight check. Insight. You're not proficient in insight. Your insight is +2, so you get a 10. You see him kind of like smugly looking down on you about how, yeah, it's stupid to pick a fight with things you can't win, right? And then he kind of retracts his head a little.
What do you know of my father?
You started the fight, not us. We've only defended ourselves from your illogical, unfounded attack.
Defended yourself? Is that what you call it? What a wonderful job you're doing. What do you know of my father?
I know that I want to take revenge on him.
Revenge?
He seems to look you over and then realise.
The champion of Fondurg. An expatriate of Shafgushel, perhaps.
Your father would not approve of this silly game you're playing.
It is not my father's approval that I seek!
And smoke bellows out of his mouth and rises, and Mel kind of like buzzes a little closer. His eyes dart up to Mel and says,
I would suggest you ask your pet not to make any rash decisions.
And then back down to you. Look, we know your father spawns the same hatred in me that he seems to do in you.
You wish revenge on my father for what he did to your family. I understand that. After all, I'm experiencing it right now. You killed my children!
More smoke. We have never sought out violence. We only wish prosperity to all beings. Which is why every time we attacked, we gave every chance for you to leave us and live.
Perhaps that is why you are weak, and now sitting beneath a pit.
We have a dragon with daddy issues, yes. Green smoke. Green poisonous gas. It's like a chlorine gas smoke, yes. We can help you take out your father.
And what makes you think I would need the help of an insignificant little dwarf? And, what even are you? More than a snack.
Briar says, I'm a hobbit.
Of course. The best linchpin of any army is a dwarf and a hobbit.
Tell that to your boar.
So it was you that killed my son, my eldest boar.
We did. He attacked us. We defended ourselves. Look, you're talking to me, aren't you? You can obviously see that there's something here to gain.
Yes, indeed, there may well be. I think I've chosen which of you is to be the gift, from which of you is most mouthy. The dwarf will return to Fondurg, and you will espouse my power, and the fact you were outsmarted here today. You will ask that Fondurg try no more tricks, because as much as I like games, I will tire of this soon. My offer stands. I will leave your pathetic town alive if you send out one sacrifice and one treasure every evening at dusk.
As he said, I've chosen my target. The deer looked up at him, and he says,
"Take the hobbit,"
in Draconic. And the deer sort of paces round, not turning its back on either of you, but it comes round to be more on Briar's side. Lets out a snarl that does not befit a deer, but does befit a dragon. If you educated your children better, they would still be alive. I didn't want to hurt any of them, but they tried to kill us, and our self-preservation instincts kicked in.
Well then, we'll have to do something about that, won't we? I must say, try as I must to forgive your murder of my children, you have to understand how that leaves a sickly taste in my mouth. I could do with something to wash that taste out of my mouth. Maybe a little flesh. So, Archer.
And his claws come down the front of the pit. And his wings extend outwards, covering the top of the pit. And his shoulders are deep beneath the pit now. And his neck, his long serpentine neck, reaches down to you. And his mouth is almost within reach. He says,
"Help me wash this sickly taste of my children's death from my mouth. Hold out your hand."
And as his teeth bare, and his neck increases in length as to his face getting within reach, he demands that you hold out your hand. What do? There is now him on one side, you down the bottom of the pit, Briar here, red deer here, and then a mole up on the ledge looking down above. Yes or no? Do you hold out your hand? This is the sort of thing I'm going to need a specific poll on, it seems. Hold out your hand, but then flip the bird and Misty step out of there. You could. You would be... That is very clearly going to start a proper fight if you do so. He has said that he will let you leave as a warning to the town, as a messenger to take back the fact that he is smarter than all of you and to lord his godliness over you all. He has quite clearly got a megalomaniac god complex, as he has called himself a god. And he is wanting to let you live to spread the word of to be his first acolyte, as it were. So if you hold out your hand, you know what's coming, but he will let you live. If you don't hold out your hand, you may be kicking off something else, and he may take more. So it's obviously a very dangerous and difficult decision to make. You don't need both hands to be a messenger, exactly. He's making a point. He is lauding his power over you. And he specifically said, Archer, hold out your hand. So he's clearly doing it as a way of saying, you need two hands to be killing my children. So we'll have to do something about your ability to kill my children. Alright, with 64% of the vote, you do not hold out your hand. As he leans down and says,
maybe a little flesh. So, Archer, hold out your hand.
His face inches from yours, feet from yours. You staunchly look him in the eyes and refuse. Do you say anything to him? You don't have any weapons drawn because you just fell down a hill. And if you go for a weapon, he's obviously within biting range. He could snap at you, potentially. You say, we could work together, and for that I need both hands.
You're used to me lies. in the message you can give to Fonderg. You do not need both hands for that. In fact, you don't need either. So choose one or I take both.
And as he glares, you can feel the heat from his breath now coming out. You can smell the acrid, very strong smell of like a burning rubber hitting your nostrils. You can feel your nostrils starting to like involuntarily react to it. You can feel your mouth starting to close up just from the proximity of his chlorine-like breath. And as you decide what to do next, that's where we're going to leave it for today. And we'll pick up here next time. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody. I'll see you next week.